Welcome, everybody, to the City of Farmers Branch special call meeting for Tuesday, April 9th. Our first order of business today is item B1, which is consider setting goals and objectives for the city manager for the contract year December 2023 through December 2025 and take appropriate action.
Well, Mayor and Council, I'll start the talk on this one. This is asked for as a future agenda item, and so wanted to respect the wishes of council, but also balance it with the fact that the contract cycle starts in early December and moves through the contract year. So what I did is I looked at what we'd previously shared, which is how we do evaluations for the city staff, and started comparing that, crosswalking it against how do other city managers get evaluated and what does that tool and technique look like? So what I did is went and found a couple different mechanisms, but the biggest one being finding that the most effective tool, in my opinion, was you're looking for a set of behaviors from your city manager. And you'll see that with the staff report as well. So you have the Farmers Branch proposed version of a city manager evaluation. So it's going to use a basic scale.
Thank you.
I printed one for y'all.
Thank you.
Just so you have it.
Thank you, Ben.
You have it. Mark Casey Collins.
As long as I have one or two.
So the first part is looking at those behaviors. Those will be universal for anybody on council, whether they've been on council for 1 month, they've been on council for multiple years. But going back through the evaluation period, because my contract period is within the middle of an election cycle. And so with that in mind, I want to create something that allowed you all to provide feedback on the behaviors you would expect to see from your city manager. And that's 10 that are proposed as well and some open-ended questions. And you would rate them basically. That would go into executive session and the council would work through this worksheet. I would also give you feedback on myself and basically tell you how I felt and some examples of what I did to try and excel in each of those areas. For example, on item number 10, professional growth and development, some of those things may not be as self-evident that I've been working on behind the scenes, whether it's maintaining certifications, going to conferences, doing things to make myself better as the city manager as well. The other side of this would be the city manager work plan. What I did is I looked at the budget and looked at what we said we were going to do for the fiscal year. Again, not a clean overlap for everything we say we're going to do, but I gave some general high-level areas because what's going to happen is a lot of what I'm asked to do is sometimes there's big things that always happen. One is the budget, and that's in there because it's probably the most important thing I do for you all as your city managers, work to synthesize what you're looking to see in the budget process and bring it to you all as a recommended and proposed budget. From there, I took feedback from different things I've heard from you all throughout the year. I'll hand this out as well since I realized I handed out the evaluation. You already have better paper. Is it really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is on stock city paper.
Thank you, sir.
You have that as
That's
well.
all right.
So I took these based on feedback I'd received from you all throughout the year, areas of concern, areas you'd like to see improvement on from the city as a whole. And so one of the biggest ones was the ability to find documents, contracts, resolutions, ordinance on the website, make it more searchable, make it more user-friendly. I received questions and I have the benefit of institutional knowledge. I know exactly where to go to look for stuff on the website, whether it's Laserfish or another element, and how to say, how do you get there? We're working on the website to make that better. The next council meeting, we'll talk about that some more as well. Other ones would be, procurement was the first one, my apologies. Procurement's been something that's been a subject of intense discussion for this council as we look to make sure procurement's done by the book and there's no questions or concerns as we clean up habits for the future. Succession for city staff is also something that's very important. So I've aligned the city to have deputy directors, but as we'll talk about in a future moment, is that when we lose a director or a leadership position, are we building bench strength to make sure we have people to come in behind those leaders and fill those gaps? Also using different technology solutions, so there's a clean handoff. What happened in the past is it would be in somebody's notebook, in somebody's email, in somebody's bookshelf, and a great example would be some of these larger projects. For example, Oakbrook's been something that's been talked about for decades. The institutional knowledge was in different places, different bookshelves, different filing cabinets. It's now all been synthesized, scanned, and put in one folder to where when that subject comes up, it's all together. Staff of the future will not have to recreate that process. And we saw that with some of the conversations we were having. We have a lot of capital projects going on. Again, capital projects can vary, and there's a lot of things you cannot control, as we've seen other projects we're not controlling take a lot longer than anticipated in the city, but it's also to make sure we're making progress on these or substantial progress. And when I say substantial progress, that's saying council is happy with the level of progress being made on these projects. They're not just sitting there. The worst feeling ever is seeing just a blank piece of land saying, hey, wasn't that supposed to be a park? Wasn't that supposed to be a new city facility? Wasn't it supposed to be renovated, whatnot? So this will make sure we're giving progress on those. Good custodian of taxpayer dollars is rule number 1 for city management. It's going to say the budget and the budget process will be open, transparent, honest like it was last year. We're about to start that. It'll get a little bit intense with lots of topics on the budget on future agenda items. Also, taking into consideration other things we've heard as concerns from council, stabilization funds, because there's a lot of things that could influence the budget in a negative way, such as point of sale versus point of distribution for sales tax dollars, LCRR, and the landfill closure post-closure. So we've talked about some of this, but it hasn't been done yet. Some of this will take council action. The fee for trash is part of stabilizing the landfill closure post-closure fund. So we'll talk about those. Those go out through the year. The work plan's a little bit at a disadvantage because it's 4 months after the contract period had started. So some of these do have work already being made on them as well. And then the final one, and this has been universal for the council, even for us as city manager, is the focus on public safety. And so a lot of this is going to be data and statistics, but as my police chief says, he can't control the crime rate. He can influence how he responds to it and how he works in the community and with the community and how our response alignments are put together. But we'll talk about other elements of that, which would be our staffing levels, the change in the fire schedule, specialized units, and then also enhancements to our speed data tools, which will also be discussed at the next council meeting. Again, just because we talk about it, then we have to put it in the budget, and then we have to implement it. So none of these are quick, but they all show a higher level of just different items to talk about. Now, again, when it comes to the evaluation, it's still going to focus on those behaviors. The work plan would fall more in the open-ended questions or just as supplement to what y'all received to talk about effectiveness in delivering the projects you've asked to be focused on. The third element, which is to be developed because I'm still working on that with HR, would be a 360 survey for all my direct reports to try it, because part of what I have to do is I work for the council. So I have you 6 as my bosses, but I also have my employees that report to me. My direct reports would do a survey. It would be a pass-through survey to HR. The results would be gathered by them, and then they would be passed to the city council. So you all can say, I can say, well, I feel like I'm doing a great job leading the city. But my staff could give you something different. So this can give you feedback on me as how I'm doing with my staff and my direct reports. That is the proposal for the alignment. I did have this marked for action, so council can say we like the way we're going to do this evaluation. We can always improve it in future years. We can always go in a different direction, but this is trying to establish a baseline for the pulse of the city manager. So I'd open up to you all.
Very good. Thank you, Ben. I guess we'll start over here on the right. Councilman Merritt?
Thank
Or,
you. That's fine, I'll start.
okay.
I think this is a good beginning. I think probably where a lot of the council discussion will come into are the behaviors, if we believe that those 10 are the right ones to focus on. Obviously, they may be in no priority order, but I think that's where the focus and maybe is 10 too many to focus on? That would probably be another question that I have related to the behaviors listed here. I think the open-ended questions are proper. I think there's probably an opportunity for some other, I wouldn't say versions, but some other perspectives of those open-ended questions that could be generated as well. As far as the work plan, I think that's built off of, as you described, the objectives that we are and projects that we are focused on. That seems reasonable. It also allows us to have a updated perspective or status of those elements across the period, if you will. So that'll be helpful. And then I look forward to perhaps some more on what the 360 survey for the direct reports would have and how that process would be, I guess, exercised by our HR department and assuring, most importantly, perhaps anonymity and the clearness, if you will, for open and free feedback without reprisal, if you will. And I know that's not necessarily something, but that would necessarily happen, but I think we have to build in some assurances that that does not occur.
Absolutely, and that's part of the journey. So HR would want to look through those, and they would be the gatekeepers to
Understood.
make sure there's nothing concerned there. It'd be similar to also, part of the tools would be the Gallup survey that we run every year that's employee engagement. And I ran a different filter the last time I presented data on just me and how I'm doing as the city manager. I can run it by directors, and you all saw that score was exceptionally high. I think we were at a 498, 496, somewhere in there. Basically at the 99th percentile for engagement from the directors and leadership team. But it's the Q12 questions. It's a little bit different engagement. I'm really looking at some meatier questions that really give council insight. So talking about what they do, I'm asking the questions that help move their discussions forward, basically showing I'm investing in each of them.
Sure.
And helping to grow and guide them. So it's a little bit different. I'll fuse both together when it comes time for that, so you all can see both of those. Usually you'll have the report ahead of time already. We tend to run the survey midsummer, but so that'll be legacy information at that point in time. But if there's also questions you all would like as well, we can always update that element. But HR would be the gatekeeper on the 360 component.
Thank you. Those are my comments at the moment, Mayor. Thank you.
You bet. Councilman Baird?
I'll probably need a little time to think through some of this. I don't have anything specific at this point, other than possibly the 10 things could be culled down to 5 or 7. And a couple of them seem, I don't know how to express this exactly, just things that are obviously just everyday, expectations that it will be very obvious whether things are going well or not. And I guess on first blush, I'm thinking that maybe we need to take that list down a few in number that way. So, but again, I'm gonna have to spend some more time just thinking over through the things we've been given here.
Very good. Councilwoman?
I agree, but the anonymity for those surveys and the Gallup is really important to build into that, so people understand that it's safe to speak. It's okay. I mean, improving the access to all records and, the budget process, I feel like that's a given. That we should be good custodians of taxpayer dollars and that we should be able to find stuff. So I'm not sure, I mean, could see why we would need to have that in writing for you, but I do feel like that's just a given.
I believe that it should be a given, but I will say council had strong feelings about the budget process the year prior to that and how it went. And that's why I stuck it in there, is to make sure that baseline is there. So even if it's an absolute given, I still think that's the most important thing I'm going to do for you all as your employees. So, and the highest thing for the taxpayers that are watching. So I would always love to have that one there, even though I'm supposed to be doing it no matter what. To me, it's that important. So I would ask to always have the budget in the budget process, because it could always improve as well. So last year was the first year we broke it into bite-sized pieces instead of spending 3 days just nonstop chewing through a budget. And I felt like we did end up having a day where we reviewed everything one more time. But again, that's one where I feel we can always be better. I've seen some cities do some more engagement on the website and some other elements with the budget. So I want to strive for that as well. But absolutely, it should be a given. But I believe sometimes we don't always hit the mark that council's looking for.
Okay.
Councilman Roman?
So I think there should be 5 goals. I just think about my own self and putting together goals and the things that I can accomplish in 1 year. And I think you have a good start here of some things to help us sort of maybe refine the list a little bit better and be a little bit more specific on certain things. And then, of course, make sure that they're SMART goals, right? They're specific, measurable, attainable, so on and so forth. The only feedback that I would provide on these here is if we end up going with the third item here, that succession not only is about all the employees under you, but it also to include you. And then for making public safety a priority, if that's one of the ones that are remaining and we go on to there, that it's not just fire and police, but it also include our first responders, and tech as well as part of that. So those are my observations from this. But I think it's a good start of sort of picking out some of the projects that you've been tasked with thus far, as well as some of the things that you've heard us talk about being pieces of importance. So I think it's a good start.
Well, on one of them, the access to data and the information, we have found that, I'm very fortunate to have Stacy over there, who's my custodian of records for the city, but there's opportunities before her tenure. And so we're slowly working backwards in time to make sure everything's connected. Meeting minutes are connected. They may exist in Laserfish, but they don't necessarily exist in Granicus on the agenda items from the past. So we're trying to bring everything up to the same standard, but working backwards there's an intensity to it. There's just a lot to do.
Are you done?
And then as far as this one, what's the timing on this one? Because I had already provided to you my feedback, so I don't want to waste my time filling out something that I've already done.
This is meant for the next time as
Okay.
we approach it, because we're already 5 months in essentially. So it's making sure y'all are in agreement on how you want to provide feedback to me as a group versus, there was one time I got feedback and it was 5 circled on a piece of paper. Another one, you gave me detailed notes that both were opportunities and strengths that I could focus on and be better. And some of it was just an individual conversation. So it's to make sure there's a process all of you all agree to, so the feedback is harmonious and makes it easier for me to act on that feedback instead of having 6 different voices communicating to me differently. It all says, hey, for staff effectiveness, here's how we felt we'd like to see you be better in this arena. So it's saying, do you all agree on these different arenas? If so, we can always massage the definitions, but it's those behaviors you would like to see from your city manager. And again, that tells new council members when they come in what the expectations are for me. And then after they complete the next evaluation, we can then circle back and say, is this the right tool for next year? And as this is our first year doing it this way, or will be our first year doing it this way, it'll set kind of a baseline for the future to where there's no more one, what do we do? What do we not do? What's the city doing? What have we done in the past? It'll standardize it for future councils, future city managers, and also for the future managers of this organization to see how the city managers evaluate it so they can start looking at those behaviors and look what the expectations of the council are. It makes it easier to communicate that because there'll always be what you're looking for, but also what you expect. And so that'll help clarify that because that's something I felt like was missing when y'all asked for information about how is the city manager evaluated. I sent you the job posting back in the day, and that told you what you were looking for, but the expectations weren't nearly as clear. So the goal of this is to set clear expectations for the behaviors for me or whoever's in this chair to be a successful city manager for the city council of Farmers Branch. So what do those behaviors look like, and how do we measure those?
And let me make sure I understand the purpose of today. Is it to get to 5?
It's whatever y'all would like to do. If you'd like 5, if you'd like 10, smaller is easier because at the end of the day, this is measuring progress on things that need to be done in the organization in the eyes of my council. This is agreeing that y'all believe these are the behaviors I should exhibit in accomplishing the direction of my council.
Okay.
So I would love for us to get to a point of agreement with the understanding I will clean these up. We will make these much more user-friendly. So when it's time to use them, you have that interface. And I'll get those to you sooner than later so you can make notes throughout the year. But at the end of the day, it's just, are you comfortable with this type of direction, these categories, these objectives and goals? And if not, is something missing or is something more needed or is it too much? Because you're right, 6 is a lot of categories. And I could go through and refine them as SMART goals as well. But are the categories correct? Is the general direction correct? And then I'll get it back to council for you all to have in your possession.
Yeah. I mean, I think it addresses the things that I would envision as sort of objectives and goals for you. But that's all I got right now. I just have to maybe see which one or what parts I maybe don't agree with or maybe don't feel that are as necessary as the top 5.
Okay.
So that's it for now.
Okay. May I comment? All right. I took a little different approach on this when I was going through this. I went and researched the city of Dallas to use their template and to see what they were evaluating their city manager on. And he had 6 strategic priorities, and he had items that were goals and objectives underneath each of the 6 priorities. So just to give you an idea, public safety, mobility, solutions, infrastructure and sustainability, economic and neighborhood vitality, quality of life, government performance, and financial management. Okay, not too different from what we've done here. Okay. Then I proceeded to do more research. And you can even get as involved as this, that one city put out, okay? That really sort of walks you through your defining criteria, developing criteria, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was reading through that. But even before I did that, I had come up with some of my own areas, which would have been my strategic priorities, very similar to what had been done in City of Dallas, even before I located this. And so I put those together here, and I'm not too far away from what has been included on your handouts. So I think, obviously, I feel like we were thinking very closely. I'm happy to make copies of this other stuff. I'm not sure that, I really wish Councilman Jackson was here. I think he'll be here in a while, but I don't know if it's your goal to walk out of this room today with this narrowed down. If it is, then we need to spend some time working through it and talking through it. If you feel like you need more time to synthesize this information, that may be okay too. You tell me.
Yeah, and I think that was the question I was asking. I was trying to understand, what's the goal of today's meeting? Are we going to walk out of here and say, great, we've selected these items, and here are the goals for the city manager, and we're done, or is this sort of an introduction to that discussion, and then are we going to come back and refine them? That's sort of what maybe I was trying to ask and understand what the goal was, because if I'm looking through this right now, just in my opinion, the first one. I like the ensure proper alignment of city contracts, procurement, and grant management to limit future liabilities. That one is important to me. Preparing succession in all departments. I think that's important to me. I mean, the other stuff is great, but that's really the nucleus of what's really important is making sure that we have a succession plan in place for everybody, including your position. And then the second to last, sort of focusing on the budget and the budget process, because that is the biggest deliverable of any city managers is the budget. And then, of course, public safety. And so those were sort of the 4 items that, for me, stood out among this list here. I don't know that there's any other items that I can think of at the moment that I would consider adding, but as I'm trying to refine them and say, we're already having a short year, so, what are the things that I would really like to see, and then have a discussion in November and say, what progress, if any, has been made to these, and are we satisfied with the progress? But those are just my opinion on those.
So if I give you my goal, council, it would be aspirational. Y'all love everything you see and we're on the right path, potentially act on it today. If not, my goal would be to try and put it on the next agenda to synthesize your feedback in and bring it back. I would like for this to be brought before council before the council changes, since it was this council that brought these requests forward. I will not be at the first meeting in May, so I would like to do it at the next meeting if we aren't comfortable with where we're at here. So the first meeting in May, talk about developing succession planning, my deputy will be she'll be sitting here running that meeting as me, and I'll miss my first meeting in my history with Farmers Branch, but it's important to miss meetings and give opportunities for others to step up and grow. So that would be my aspirational goals is, do we feel comfortable? It's, Councilman Roman, you talked about 4 that are right here. If the rest of the council's comfortable, I'm comfortable with what direction my council gives me. I'll put it there and we'll move on and go.
Well, y'all go ahead, speak first.
I kind of ranked them as well. Ensure proper alignment with the contracts. It's important. We have to protect the city because in doing that, we protect our budgetary cycles, quite frankly, and our tax dollars. So the succession planning is, you just never know when something's going to happen, honestly. So that is very important. I already threw in the taxpayer dollars, and the public safety is always a priority for me. The building enhancements and renovations, that can just go away as far as I'm concerned.
You think what?
The building enhancements and renovations, to me, that's part of, in my mind, if you're, ensuring proper alignment of the city and succession planning and the budget, that's gonna fall into that realm. So that's more of a subcategory for me of what's gonna happen with natural growth.
Efficiency of operations, it's actually written in there.
Yeah.
And so that would be making sure that those things happen. I would concur with that.
And then, again, the access to public records, and that's just a given. And I don't think that that's necessarily, although that falls under your realm, I think you nailed it. That's really Stacy's. So I get it. There's things missing. You're working on it. She's working on it. It's not yeah.
But she's not our employee. Ben is.
Correct. But if he's
That's what you were
But if
trying to get to.
if he's given directive to correct something, then he has to delegate
Sure.
and be able to manage his employees.
And
And
that piece may be a longer term piece to get the website the way everybody wants it, and to get it where it's user friendly for residents so they can find the stuff easily.
I agree.
So, okay.
Not throwing you under the bus, Stacy.
Expectations are high, Stacy.
I agree.
David, what are your thoughts?
Well, I concur with both what Omar and Tina have said. The 2 that are kind of outside their top 4 are elements of, efficiency in the operations. And so I'd be comfortable with the same 4, not necessarily any priority order, that they've already alluded to. I think perhaps it comes back to what Omar, you mentioned, and Ben alluded to as well, making sure we have some smart elements to that. How are we going to measure that accordingly? But on an initial blush of trying to solidify on things, I would think those 4 would rise to the top. And I'd be comfortable with those.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still having some trouble dividing things out and whatnot. I concur with a lot of what I've heard here, though, so I'm not going to say anything earth-shattering over here, so I'm just going to pass.
So, Mayor and Council, what I'd like to do then is confirm on the city manager work plan. I have the initiatives and the focus areas it sounds like you all would like to see. Basically freshen those up, add the smart elements to it, and bring it back at the next council meeting for you all to affirm the work plan deliverables. And then now I'd be looking for feedback on the behaviors that are the actual ranking of the evaluation as the behaviors. If I could ask for a similar exercise on what would you like, what do you not like on there? What would you like for me to change and move forward? And I'll follow the same process as well. Or some you don't like, some you do, or some that are missing.
Number 5 and 7 seem very similar.
They do.
And if you wanted to, you could almost throw number 9 into that same grouping. It has similar meaning communications.
Yeah. I struggle with professional development because it's not like we're, if I just imagine my conversations with my manager and, when we have our touch points, we're generally having a conversation about, okay, you're working on this certification or this designation. So they're aware of those things, but I don't know how at all throughout our conversations, we've ever even talked about professional development.
I've talked about it at the end of the year when in a different meeting, but what this would do is align to the city and what we're doing. So when I talk about succession planning, granted, I'm not a successor for anyone else, but it aligns with our culture of growth. For example, many of my employees have taken the Texas Women's Leadership Institute. Several are going through the CPM program, which is the Certified Public Manager program. Others are working on certified certificates that show their alignment to growing in the profession. And it's also saying the city manager, I won't become stagnant in it. So some of that's professional development, also giving back to the profession, serving on boards, serving on different committees, not only as a representative of Farmers Branch, but for the profession to continue to invest and grow the profession as a whole for city management and bring people into it, saying that's part of the give back feedback loop that we've built in this organization as well, and continuing to exhibit those behaviors as the city manager as well. But again, it's something that doesn't need to be on here. It was one that was added for consideration.
So am I to understand that you're basically holding yourself to the same standard with which you ask your employees to rise to?
Yep, absolutely.
Fair.
You know,
I feel it's important to continue growing, even if it's just reading a book. I have quite a few books on my desk, and most of them I've gotten through, but not all of them. So that's part of it too. Just it's little things, but it's continuing to push yourself to consider additional perspectives and just not become stagnant or complacent in my professional growth.
see if
And
you
part of
think
that
that
is
they
we have a
should be
city book club, which we even
combined, 'cause I
posted. So you
have
see
that down in one of
a group of people coming together and reading a book here at this table. We posted it on LinkedIn so everybody could see it. But it's a
have it
group
in the
of
same
rising
group.
leaders, and it includes the city managers. We usually sit on the periphery.
I'm just
but
trying to-
just
if
being
we're
there
trying
to support the
to narrow it down.
conversation. And you saw Parks have their Leadership Institute, and then HR is working on some different programs for staff as well, so we
Right.
can develop future leaders. So it's just saying, growth has to be continual, and also in the city management realm, it changes too quick. We have the state legislature that's going to always make changes, so it's being aware of that. Just you can't just sit there and assume it's going to happen. You have to be active, working with other city managers. And that's part of where this comes from. This is feedback loops from other city managers and different approaches to how they get evaluated. What's the best practice for them? And this was one that I really liked, and they talked through and said, how does it work and how do they use it with their council? And this is one, after a couple of years, turned out to be a really strong, it may not be a good fit here, but I thought it would be a good fit for you all to consider.
I think I think one thing that needs to maybe occur is, I have my list of things that I address. I think I'm gonna have to then probably add maybe a 10 or 15-minute discussion on just touching base on some of these things, because while you may have a presentation at the end of the year to maybe highlight how you've demonstrated proficiency in many of these items, if not all, I want to see it for my own self. And I'm not going to have that opportunity without having an actual discussion with you about, what's going on. Oh, you started a new book. What's that book about? Oh, you started a new certification, or you're doing a research project. Those things I think would be important. And I'm not going to know how to effectively rank you. And even if you tell me, hey, I've done this, and that, I've read, 17 books and, have a new certification or whatever, I wouldn't know how to rank that from a 1 to 5. It'd be difficult for me, but I feel like I would have a better understanding if I had touch points with you throughout the year. So And it's more of a homework item for me to add to my little list.
Can you just keep a running log for us?
Absolutely.
Just when you send out a Friday update, if you've had a substantial number, just kind of, this is where I'm at with that, right? Just here we are.
I will share some of the things I'm doing, then be a little bit more talkative in that area, because I'm not especially talkative about myself, but I can strive to share more of what I'm working on and what I'm pushing myself to be better at.
It's gonna be how we evaluate you from now, so you better get used to it.
Yeah, that's part of the communication.
Yeah.
So, but
And that's, and you talked about feedback loops, and so the one favor I would have on these is as council decides this is the direction we'd like to go, and this is how you would like to evaluate my behaviors, one thing I would like for us to emulate as an organization as well is those touch points. So as I have my one-on-one meetings with you, I will strive once a quarter to have a conversation about how I'm doing with these goals, because with my staff, it's a continuous conversation, and we document it once a quarter as we're getting into our new rhythm. But what I would like to do also is for my council to have that discussion when they say, hey, how am I doing? Because each of you is going to take this list differently. These are going to mean different things to each of you. And some of you may love the Friday update. Some of you may say, hey, you're using Times New Roman. That's the worst fun ever. And I just can't stand it. I mean, but it could be something that, and I just want to make sure. I've been told some folks really don't like Times New Roman as a font. And so just, it's little things, right? Knowing what your audience would like. I know that's a very
But
superficial
your
example.
audience shouldn't be petty either when you have 6 bosses. So,
Trying something very, very superficial on that one to where it's not in the weeds on it, but that would just be a touch point with you all. And so I'd align these quarterly to our meetings one-on-one and ask for feedback and just to get an idea how I'm doing for each of you. So it's not a surprise at the end of the year or a big research assignment to say, wait, go back all the way to December. How are we doing? So I'll keep something internally as well, and you have copies for you also where we're at for each of you. And so you have that built up to where when we get to November, December, this isn't a 3 or 4 hour meeting. It's a confirming and affirming what you saw throughout the year. Because that also takes away the time bias of it could have been a really good month before my evaluation, or it could have been a really rough month. And so let's look at the year as a whole.
yeah, the only modification I would make is maybe 5, 7, and 9 be combined as sort of just communication. Just my opinion on that. And I mean, and I still will. I like to put together a formal write-up on what my thoughts are, similar to what I presented you last year. So I'll still do that in addition to this, but I'll fill this out as well.
So Omar, may I ask a question? You made 2 references to communication you've had with Ben on expectations, your expectations. I heard the first one thinking that it was on this particular document. The second time you just stated it sounds like it occurred much earlier. So it sounds like that feedback was not predicated on this document. Is that a correct clarification?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, when we had our executive session in November, when we had our discussion, I had a list of
Sure.
here's what I've seen, right? Like a stoplight. What should you start doing? What should you stop doing? And what should you continue doing? And I put that together as a way to make sure I didn't forget those bullet points. And so when we didn't have a discussion, I was like, there you go.
I was just clarifying. Thank you for that backdrop. Because if you had provided feedback on this, that would be helpful to know what you had already.
Oh,
But
no.
it sounds, and you've already clarified that that's not the case, and I thank you for that.
Yes, Councilman Roman separately gave me an opportunity to see how I was doing with his expectations for the role of city manager.
Well,
Is that something that could be shared at some point in time?
Well, I don't know if it exists. I threw mine away.
Oh, okay.
It was just my notes. I literally just pulled up a Word document, Word vomited, organized it, and put it together nicely, and then printed it out for a public discussion, and then it never
Well,
happened.
this will give us the start of some structure. So,
if I may.
yeah, please.
I kind of see this, and we've talked about grouping some of the communication elements together, and I don't know how others feel. The mayor leaned over, and number 8, community relationships, seems to also fall under the communication aspect as well. Seems. I don't know how others feel about that. So the other areas that I see are organizational driven. Those are 1, 3, and 4, there could be some inclusion of number 2 as policy facilitation. But I think that comes in perhaps with strategy and some organizational, but how to deal with the council based on how it's written here, helping elected officials and community stakeholders work toward achieving common goals. And so I'm not sure that's organizational or strategy or council relationships. From a policy facilitation, I'm struggling with the grouping. So the other 2, if I may jump ahead, number 6 and number 10 seem more persona. We've had some discussion on 10 with personal and professional development, as well as the integrity. Those seem to me be more persona driven. So I'm coming up with 3, possibly 4, if we try to figure out where number 2, sits in our list as communication, organizational, persona or personal, and then whatever number 2 may be so again, still consolidating it. I believe that communication would have several sub-bullets capturing this, and perhaps organizational would have some sub-bullets as well. But that's just my consolidation approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think there's a lot of different ways we can maybe group some of these together. Maybe not a consolidation, but maybe grouping them and
Correct.
generally labeling them, and then based off of that general grouping, be able to provide one score for those commonly related things. I could see that. And for that, I would need more time to
To think about it.
go through and figure out the commonalities and what preference I would have for grouping them, and then think about my why to be able to share it with everybody. So for that, I think I'd need a little bit more time to think about it, but those are my thoughts.
I agree.
For the grouping and calling this down. The other thought that's come to me is what a interesting situation we're in as a governmental entity, and the council works so little on an hours per week, let's say, compared to a regular boss who would, like your boss, let's say, you probably have more interaction. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around, how would I even begin to say, Ben, you've done well on this, or, I'm wondering if to throw out I'll back off on that idea because it's probably too crazy, but just, the time it will take to try to evaluate Ben on all these different issues, the time it would take for us to get the knowledge we need to do a good job. And to, we don't know. He runs the city. We're this separate entity. We're not on site. There's all these issues that are different from running a Chick-fil-A and, telling all the employees there how, evaluating them. So I just see an inherent need for some creativity on, I support what we're wanting to do. I think we need to think through what the best way to do it is. The crazy idea I had a minute ago was, do you split some of this up between the members of the council and say, David, you just focus on this and evaluate him in this, because then you'll have one thing instead of 5 things, let's say, to do. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not
I know.
picking on anybody. I could have picked on anybody. I'm just trying to get my head around. I don't know how there's no way I can really know how Ben communicates with other governmental entities or with his staff. Now, I can tell how he, communicates with us and stuff, but
So Councilman Baird, that would be on me to make sure I'm sharing on the behaviors that you, that you all are asking to see. So how am I communicating with our community sponsors? Am I meeting with them? Am I working to build those relationships within the community? And so, and I believe, part of that would be like our interactions with DART. They're instrumental with the lobbyists going downstairs. Sometimes it's less pleasant. Maybe it's an organization that holds a permit for a certain facility in Dallas that causes concerns on the west side. But are we trying to leverage and push where our residents' voice may not go as far? And that's where we leverage the city's voice with council support to magnify that voice forward. So that'd be on me to share in those areas. That would be the quarterly touch base. And then also once a year when we come into executive session to talk about these behaviors, you all as a council can talk through these and work through them and share different experiences, because there will be different ways you all experience working with me.
sure.
And sometimes I see some of you all quite a bit. Sometimes it's kind of quiet. Y'all have other stuff going on, other responsibilities. And so, as you said, there's other things going on. So it may only be a couple hours one week, but it may be one really long weekend. It just depends on what the balance is on that one. But to me, that's where that communication piece comes in. If I fail to communicate, which is the number one most difficult thing in every organization to make sure it's great, then these others kind of fall out of balance because I'm not saying what I'm doing or what's going on there. So I've got to make sure I'm communicating to you all so you can weigh and then give me feedback on those behaviors. So it'd be on me to make sure you're aware of those and then make sure we have touch points as well.
I'll share what we do at my job. I've got my manager who doesn't live in the same state. She's in St. Louis. And so we used to, when she first started, just to get comfortable with everybody, we met every other week, and now it's 3, and maybe at some point we'll go into every 4 weeks or something. But, there's always an agenda of let's, big changes that might be going on in the firm. Do you have any questions? Have you completed this really important thing that the firm is behind? And then we go through goals. How are you doing on your goals? Is there anything that you might need my help in for me to step in and facilitate that or help advance that? And it is a 30-minute conversation, and maybe 10 to 20 minutes is actually spent on my goals. The other part is spent talking about my dogs or random stuff, but it's having an intentional opportunity for a discussion about goals or metrics, so that at the end of the year, because what they have to do at the end of the year is then they go to the board and say, here's Omar, here's been his performance and his progress towards his goals, and here's why I'm requesting that we give him a raise of X percent or whatever. So I'm incentivized to do my best to advocate for myself to her throughout the year, so that she's well prepared for a discussion with the board about a raise. So that's why I was asking earlier, how are we going to try and give you a grade if we're not in this? Our job is policy making, and it also it includes management, but it's only one employee, and I think sometimes that's not as highly focused as policy decisions, but it is part of our contractual obligation. And so that's why I think I'm going to include maybe a 5 or 10 minute discussion during our one-on-ones, either weekly or maybe a 20-minute discussion every month, just so that I have an opportunity to touch base and ask questions about things that are going on, so that at the end of the year, I can look back at my notes from those discussions and say, you know what, he didn't do real well on this, or maybe he did really awesome at all these things, and I can actually base it off of my experience and not what is being presented at the end of the year. You know what I mean? But just thought I'd share what I do at my job in case it might be helpful for you.
I think it's important to recognize that everybody brings different experiences to the table. For me, if this were in my radio business, it's real easy. Sales dictates everything.
I was going to
Okay.
say, it's the outcome
We're
in
not,
the end.
we're not a sales organization, but we are a information communication organization. And so I think you have to look at it a little differently. And I think the longer you're in the role, you'll become more comfortable. And as Ben was talking, I was thinking, okay, you're going to have basically quarterly review update week. Okay? and we can put it on the calendar. He's gonna, the one-on-ones this week, last week of the month, whatever, that's gonna be when he's sharing information with each one of us. Then we can make that an agenda item to discuss if we have to have executive session or whatever, I don't know, that following council meeting, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think, how do you take this information and then discuss it so we're all thinking alike? Okay? We may have different interpretations of the information, and this would be a chance for us to take what we heard in the meeting and once this form is refined, I would suggest carrying it with you so you can always refer to it, or both of them. And that way, you glance at it periodically, you say, okay, yes, I want to make sure I ask about organization planning and management in my one-on-one, because I want to talk about that in the group setting. Because we can't be going around talking, to each other all the time about all this stuff. So we have to wait for the group setting. I'm just thinking of an easier way for us to come sort of full circle with the information that is being given to us, which is coming from him. Reasonable? Okay.
So,
We can try it. If it doesn't work, we'd try something else.
So it sounds like on this one, grouping of these characteristics together and kind of build a process for how we're going to make sure there's constant feedback loops between me and the council members to where we're all on the same page going into December, November of this year, reviewing this. So I'll have this queued up on the next agenda. I'll try and move it around and take the feedback I've gotten from you all today, if that works for you all, and prepare something.
fine.
Everybody good with that?
Share this information that you captured, especially this handbook.
Yeah. I have,
You sent this in a Word format?
sorry.
Make a copy.
I believe it was a PDF. I can
You still
send it
have
as Word.
this?
Yeah, just so I don't have to.
Yes, I can get that.
Okay.
I want to move some stuff around.
Electronic, that's great.
Yeah, I will send it to all of you.
Okay. That there. That is it for our regular session. Moving on, we will move into executive session to,
Mayor, could we take a 5-minute?
yeah,
break?
I'm going to read this first, then we're going to take a break. Next up will be item C1. City Council will convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 personnel to discuss the duties and responsibilities of the mayor and members of the city council. We will reconvene at 4 o'clock. Thank you. Kevin, I'm sorry. Thank you.
By the way, before we go back on record, I do want to thank everybody in the city for all the support, all the prayers over the last few weeks.
We'll get there.
You're more than welcome.
We're ready.
Ready?
Oh, yeah.
We're rolling.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we are out of executive session at 6:01. There was no action to take as a result of executive session. So I will adjourn our meeting tonight at 6:03. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I believe we're going to rush over there just so we.